I've spent most of my life standing at the front of a classroom, chalk dust clinging to my fingers, my voice carrying over the hum of restless kids. Some days, it felt like magic, watching a room full of skeptical, distracted faces slowly light up with understanding. Other days, it felt like trying to catch rain with a sieve. After 34 years as a middle school English teacher, you'd think I'd be used to the ebb and flow. But lately, I've been questioning everything, especially when it comes to my own family. It was a Saturday evening when the doubts hit hardest. My son Ethan and daughter Claire were home for dinner, something that had become rarer since they'd both moved to the city. I'd spent the afternoon cooking their favorites, pot roast, mashed potatoes, and my mother's recipe for green bean casserole. I'd been excited to have them under my roof again, even if just for a few hours. We just finished eating when the conversation turned to careers. Claire was talking about a big project at her marketing firm, her hands flying animatedly as she described landing a major client. Ethan chimed in about a promotion he was up for at his accounting job. I sat there smiling, proud of them both. Then Claire said it. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we'd had more growing up. Like nicer vacations, a bigger house, private schools. You know? She laughed lightly, but there was a sharp edge beneath her words. Ethan didn't laugh. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. Yeah, well, that's what happens when your mom chooses a job that doesn't pay enough to cover the basics. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my face grow warm. Ethan, I said carefully, teaching has never been about the money. You both know that. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. I know, Mom. I'm just saying. Sometimes it feels like you sacrificed our comfort for other people's kids. I mean, did you ever think about doing something that could have given us more security? Claire didn't say anything, but she didn't disagree either. Their words cut deeper than they realized. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to remind them of the nights I stayed up grading papers after tucking them into bed, or the weekends I spent clipping coupons so I could buy them birthday gifts. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I just nodded and started gathering plates, my hands trembling slightly. Why don't we have dessert? I said, forcing a smile. The pie should be ready. As I moved around the kitchen, my mind wandered back through the years. I remembered the time Ethan needed new cleats for soccer, and I'd quietly skip my own dentist appointment to afford them. Or when Claire wanted to go on her senior class trip to D.C., and I worked extra hours tutoring to make it happen. I thought they understood the sacrifices. Apparently I was wrong. Later that night, after they'd hugged me goodbye and driven off, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the steady tick of the old wall clock. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'd poured my life into a job that didn't matter. Sure, I'd helped kids learn to read, to write, to think critically, but what did I have to show for it? A modest pension, a small house that always needed repairs, and 2 grown children who seemed to resent the very life I'd worked so hard to give them. I went to bed but couldn't sleep. Their voices echoed in my head, mingling with my own doubts. For the first time in years, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake, not just as a teacher, but as a mother. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, one question burning in my mind. Had my life's work ever really mattered to anyone at all? The next morning, I forced myself out of bed long before the sun rose. Teaching doesn't give you the luxury of slow mornings. By 6:30, I was already out the door, a travel mug of coffee in hand and a tote bag stuffed with graded essays and lesson plans balanced on the passenger seat of my old sedan. Driving through our small Ohio town, I passed the usual landmarks. The faded gas station on the corner, the bakery where I used to take Ethan and Claire for donuts when they were little, and the elementary school playground where I'd push them on the swings after long days at work. Those memories always came unbidden, like flashes of a life that felt simpler, sweeter. When I pulled into the school parking lot, I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the low brick building. The paint was peeling in spots, and the windows could have used a good wash, but to me, it had always been more than just a workplace. It was a second home, a place where I'd invested pieces of myself day after day for over 3 decades. Inside my classroom, the smell of pencil shavings and dry erase markers greeted me. The room wasn't anything special, just rows of mismatched desks, a bookshelf sagging under the weight of dog-eared novels, and motivational posters that had been up so long their colors had faded. Still, it was mine. Before the first bell, I took a moment to sip my coffee and glance around the room. It wasn't glamorous, but it was where so much of my life had unfolded, where I'd celebrated victories like a student finally understanding Shakespeare or a reluctant reader finishing their first book cover to cover, where I'd comforted crying children, broken up fights, and stayed long past dark, preparing for the next day. The bell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. My first class filed in, 7th graders, full of restless energy and dramatic sighs. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes," a few of them mumbled as they dropped into their seats. I smiled, greeting each by name. "Good morning, everyone. Today we're diving into To Kill a Mockingbird," most groaned, but one boy, Marcus, perked up. Marcus was bright but easily discouraged, always one bad grade away from giving up completely. I remembered staying after school with him last week to go over his essay, even though it meant missing dinner with Claire, who'd been visiting. As we discussed the novel, Marcus raised his hand and made a connection between the book's themes and modern issues. My heart swelled. Moments like this were why I kept coming back year after year, paycheck or no paycheck. But then, as the class chattered around me, Ethan's words from last night crept into my mind. "Teachers don't leave legacies, Mom. They just survive." The sting returned, sharp and cold. Was he right? Was Marcus just one fleeting success in a sea of faces that would forget me the moment they walked out of my classroom for the last time? During lunch, I sat alone in the staff lounge, stirring a cup of instant soup. Across the table sat a crumpled stack of permission slips for a field trip. I thought about how, when Ethan and Claire were young, I used to bring them on those trips as chaperones. They'd loved it then, being the teacher's kids, part of my world. Now they lived in sleek city apartments, working high-paying jobs, and barely seemed to understand who I was anymore. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Claire. "Just landed a big account today. Drinks with the team later. Wish you could see my new office, Mom." I typed back a quick congratulatory message, though my throat tightened as I hit send. I was proud of her, of course, but sometimes I wondered if she was proud of me. That afternoon, as the final bell rang and the hallways emptied, I lingered in my classroom, tidying up stray papers and pushing chairs back into place. Outside, the late autumn sun cast long shadows across the playground. I looked around the empty room and whispered to myself, "You gave your life to this." But for the first time, I wasn't sure if that was something to be proud of or something to regret. The following weekend, Claire called to invite me to dinner at Ethan's new condo. "It'll be nice, Mom," she said over the phone, her tone a little too chipper to be natural. "Just the 3 of us. We haven't done this in a while." I hesitated, remembering the sting of our last conversation. But I agreed. Maybe we could smooth things over. Maybe they'd been tired or stressed and didn't mean what they'd said. When I arrived that evening, I was struck by how polished everything looked. Ethan's condo was pristine. Sleek furniture, stainless steel appliances, even a view of the city skyline from his balcony. It was a far cry from the modest home where I'd raised them. "Wow," I said, genuinely impressed as I handed him a pie I'd baked. "You've really done well for yourself, Ethan." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks, Mom. Come in. Dinner's almost ready." Claire was already at the table, scrolling through her phone. She jumped up to hug me, then went right back to typing a message. It was like hugging someone mid-distraction. We made small talk over the meal, Ethan talking about his promotion, Claire about a potential work trip to Paris. I listened, nodding in all the right places, though I couldn't help feeling like an outsider in my own children's lives. Then Ethan set down his fork and looked at me, his expression serious. "Mom, there's something I've been thinking about," he began. My stomach tightened. "Oh?" "It's about the house," he said. "It's getting old, and the maintenance must be a lot for you. Have you considered selling it and moving somewhere smaller? Maybe even into a senior community?" I blinked, caught off guard. "My house? Ethan, that's the home where you both grew up. I'm not ready to leave it." Claire jumped in before I could say more. "He's just trying to be practical, Mom. That house needs a new roof, new plumbing, everything, and you don't exactly have the income to cover all that comfortably." There it was again, that word, income. I set my napkin down carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. I've managed just fine all these years, and besides, I like my neighborhood, my garden, my neighbors, it's my home. Ethan exhaled sharply, frustration creeping into his tone. "Mom, you've worked your whole life at a job that barely paid you enough to scrape by. You shouldn't have to struggle now. If you'd chosen a better career, maybe things would have been different, for you and for us." His words hit me like a slap. I looked to Claire for support, but she just lowered her gaze and said nothing. "So that's what you both think?" My voice trembled despite my effort to steady it. That I made the wrong choices? That teaching wasn't enough? Ethan rubbed his forehead. "It's not that simple. It's just, you spent your life helping other people's kids succeed while we didn't have much. Sometimes it felt like you cared more about them than about us." The accusation lodged deep, sharp and cruel. "That's not fair," I said, my voice breaking. "Everything I did, every sacrifice I made, was for you, for this family." There was a long, heavy silence. The clinking of Claire's wine glass was the only sound. Finally, Ethan muttered, "Maybe you believe that, Mom, but it doesn't change the fact that we grew up wanting things you couldn't give us." My throat tightened. I couldn't stay there another moment. I pushed back my chair, grabbed my coat, and said, "Thank you for dinner." Neither of them stopped me as I walked out the door. Driving home, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. The city lights blurred through my tears. For years, I'd believed that my children understood, maybe even respected, the life I'd built. But that night, I realized something painful. To them, my life's work wasn't a legacy. It was a disappointment. At home, I curled up on the couch and let myself cry, the house echoing with memories of a time when my kids still believed their mother was a hero. The days that followed were a blur of going through the motions. I taught my classes, graded essays, answered emails, and smiled at students, but inside, I felt hollow. My mind kept circling back to that dinner. Ethan's harsh words, Claire's silence, the sharp sense of being unseen and unappreciated. Even at school, where I usually found solace, the doubt crept in. As I stood before my students discussing symbolism in To Kill a Mockingbird, I caught myself wondering if any of this mattered. Would they even remember me in 10 years? Or would I just fade into the background of their memories like another faded poster on my classroom wall? That Friday evening, I stayed late to finish grading, hoping the empty halls would bring some peace. By the time I drove home, it was past 7. The autumn sky deepening into a rich, bruised purple. The streetlights flickered on as I pulled into my driveway. I kicked off my shoes by the door and put on the kettle for tea, planning to spend the evening reading. The house felt too quiet, as it often did these days, but I told myself I was used to it. Then the doorbell rang. I froze, startled. It was unusual for anyone to visit at this hour. My heart gave a little leap of worry. When I opened the door, a tall man stood on the porch, framed by the glow of the porch light. He looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a well-tailored suit, his dark hair neatly combed. He held his hands clasped in front of him, like he wasn't sure if he should be there. "Mrs. Hayes?" His voice trembled slightly. I blinked, caught off guard. "Yes. Can I help you?" He gave a small, almost shy smile. "You probably don't remember me. My name's Mark Daniels. I was in your 7th grade English class. A long time ago." I studied his face, searching for the boy he once was. Slowly, a memory surfaced. An angry, withdrawn kid who sat in the back row, hoodie up, rarely speaking. "Oh my goodness," I said softly. "Mark, it's been years." "Yes, ma'am." he said, his smile widening. "I've wanted to find you for a long time, but life kept getting in the way. Tonight, I couldn't wait any longer." My curiosity flared, mixed with confusion. Why now? Mark's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Because everything I've accomplished, everything I've built, it's all because of you." I stared at him, stunned. "Because of me? Mark, He held up a hand, his voice thick with emotion. "Please, let me explain. Back then, I was lost. My dad had just walked out. My mom was working 2 jobs, and no one expected me to do anything with my life. I was angry, failing most of my classes. Honestly, I didn't think I'd make it to high school." I remembered it now. The late afternoons I spent sitting with him, coaxing him through essays, the way I'd written, "I believe in you," at the top of his paper when he'd gotten his first passing grade. "You were the first person who ever told me I could be more than my circumstances," he said, his voice breaking. "You didn't just teach me about books or writing. You taught me to believe in myself, and that changed everything." I felt my throat tighten. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the door. "Mark, I had no idea," I whispered. He stepped closer, his eyes earnest. "Tonight, I wanted to say thank you, to show you what your work really meant." From his pocket, he pulled out a small, folded photograph. It was a picture of a teenage Mark, grinning awkwardly, holding a scholarship certificate. "You helped me get this," he said. "You stayed late to help me write the essay that won it. That scholarship was my ticket out." Tears blurred my vision. I hadn't thought of that essay in years. Mark took a deep breath. "Now I own my own business. I've built something incredible. But none of it would have happened if you hadn't seen me when no one else did." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My entire body felt like it was buzzing, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it. After weeks of feeling invisible, erased by my own children's judgment, here was someone standing at my door saying the exact opposite. "Mark," I finally said, my voice trembling, "you have no idea what this means to me." He smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "Oh, I think I do. And this is just the beginning of what I came to tell you." I led Mark inside, still dazed by his sudden appearance. My hands shook as I poured us both tea, though neither of us touched it. The living room felt different with him sitting there, like a bridge had suddenly been built between my past and present. I kept glancing at him, trying to reconcile the confident, successful man before me with the quiet, angry boy I'd once known. He settled on the couch, clasping his hands together as though he were gathering courage. "I've rehearsed this conversation in my head so many times," he said, giving a nervous laugh. "But now that I'm here, the words don't seem big enough." I smiled softly. "Just tell me your story, Mark. I want to hear it all." He nodded, took a breath, and began. "My childhood. Well, you probably remember some of it. My dad left when I was 10, just walked out one day and never came back. My mom worked double shifts at the diner, trying to keep us afloat. Most nights, my sister and I ate cereal for dinner." His voice caught for a moment, and I felt a sharp ache in my chest. "I remember that year," I said gently. "You were always so tired in class." He gave me a small, rueful smile. "Yeah, and angry. So angry. I didn't think I had a future. I figured I'd drop out by 16, maybe get a job at the gas station like a couple of my cousins." He paused, his gaze steady on mine. "And then there was you. You didn't give up on me, Mrs. Hayes. Even when I failed tests, skipped assignments, or mouthed off in class, you stayed. You kept telling me I was capable of more even when I didn't believe it." Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. Memories flooded back. Late afternoons spent at my desk with him, guiding his hand as he struggled through essays, defending him when other teachers said he was a lost cause. Mark's voice softened. "I'll never forget the day you told me. Mark, your circumstances don't define you. What you do with them does." No one had ever said anything like that to me before. I pressed a hand to my chest, overwhelmed. I don't even remember saying that." "Well, I do," he said firmly. "It changed my life." He leaned forward, his energy building. With your help, I applied for that scholarship, the one for first-generation college students. I still have the essay we worked on together." He chuckled. "You probably don't remember how many times you made me rewrite it." "Oh, I remember," I said with a watery laugh. "You hated every draft." "But we got there," he said, his grin wide and boyish. "And when I got that scholarship, it was like someone finally handed me a lifeline." Mark's eyes grew bright with pride. "I went to Ohio State, worked my tail off, graduated with honors. Then I got into tech, started my own company, and now—" he spread his hands. "Now I'm in a position to help others, because you helped me first." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, my heart too full. Mark reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it carefully on the coffee table between us. "This," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "is my way of paying forward what you gave me." My hands hovered over the envelope. "Mark, what is this?" "Two things," he said. "First, I've set up a scholarship fund in your name, the Linda Hayes Foundation for Young Writers. It'll help kids like me, kids who just need someone to believe in them." My breath caught. "Mark, that's incredible." He held up a finger. "And second, there's a check inside. It's for you. It's enough to pay off your mortgage and fix up your house. And maybe," his smile turned tender, "maybe even let you retire when you're ready without worrying about money." I gasped, shaking my head. "Oh, Mark, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not," he said firmly. "You gave me everything when you didn't have much to give. This isn't charity, Mrs. Hayes. It's gratitude." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I clutched the envelope. For years, I'd questioned whether my work mattered, whether I mattered. And now, sitting across from the boy I'd once saved, grown into a man who'd come back to save me in return, I finally had my answer. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed." Mark smiled through his own tears. "No, Mrs. Hayes, you gave me my life back. This is me just returning the favor." For the rest of the weekend, Mark's visit replayed in my mind like a beautiful dream I was terrified of waking from. His words, his gratitude, the scholarship fund, it all felt unreal. But the envelope on my coffee table was very real. Every time I passed by it, my eyes filled with tears. For years, I'd scraped and saved, clipped coupons and stressed over every bill. And here was a man whose life I'd once touched, offering me a future free of fear. And still, a small part of me ached, not because of Mark, but because of Ethan and Claire. They didn't know this part of me, the part that had changed someone's life. They only saw a tired woman with a low-paying job. They didn't see the victories that never made it into paychecks or family photo albums. I knew I couldn't keep this moment to myself. They needed to hear Mark's story, not to prove them wrong, but so they'd understand who their mother really was. On Sunday night, I sent a group text. "Family dinner at my house, Tuesday at 6. No excuses." Claire responded right away with a thumbs-up emoji. Ethan just replied, "Okay, Mom." When Tuesday came, I spent all afternoon cooking, trying to keep my nerves in check. Mark had agreed to come, though I warned him it might be awkward. By the time my kids arrived, my heart was hammering like it was my first day of teaching all over again. Ethan walked in first, loosening his tie, followed by Claire in her chic blazer. "Wow, Mom, the house smells amazing," she said. I smiled, kissed their cheeks, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Thanks for coming. There's someone I want you to meet." Mark rose from the couch. He looked calm, but I could see the tension in his posture. "Ethan, Claire," I said, my throat tightening. "This is Mark Daniels. He was one of my students a long time ago." Claire tilted her head politely. Ethan gave a quick handshake, looking puzzled. "Nice to meet you," he said. "So, what's this about?" Mark glanced at me, and I nodded for him to go ahead. "I know this might seem strange," Mark began, "but I'm here tonight because your mom changed my life." Their expressions shifted, confusion, curiosity. "When I was in her class," Mark continued, his voice steady but emotional, "I was a mess, angry, lost, ready to give up. My home life was a disaster, and nobody believed in me. Nobody except your mom. Ethan's brows furrowed. Claire stopped fidgeting with her phone. She stayed after school to help me with essays, talked to me when no one else would. She even pushed me to apply for a scholarship when I thought I wasn't good enough. He smiled at me, his eyes shining. She believed in me before I believed in myself. Because of her, I went to college. Because of her, I have the life I have now. Silence filled the room. Claire's eyes glistened. Ethan's jaw worked as if he was trying to speak but couldn't find the words. Finally, Ethan whispered, "Mom, you never told us any of this." I swallowed hard. There are a lot of things I never told you. Not because I didn't want to share, but because I thought, maybe you wouldn't care. Ethan turned to Mark, his voice hoarse. "And now you've built a whole life because of her?" Mark nodded. "She's the reason I'm standing here today, and she deserves to know what she's meant to people like me." Claire's tears spilled over as she reached for my hand. "Mom, I'm so sorry. We were so focused on what we didn't have that we never saw what you were giving us." Ethan's voice broke. "All those nights you stayed late at school, I thought you were just choosing work over us. I didn't realize you were out there changing lives." The dam I'd been holding back for years finally burst. "I wasn't perfect," I sobbed, "but I gave everything I had to my students, to you both. I thought maybe someday you'd see that." They pulled me into a hug, the three of us clinging to each other while Mark quietly looked on, his own eyes misty. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not just as their mother, but as the woman I had always been. The house was quiet after Ethan and Claire left that night, but it wasn't the same silence I'd grown used to. This was a softer quiet, peaceful, full of possibility. I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, letting the evening's events wash over me. Mark's visit, my children's tears, the way they'd finally looked at me, not with judgment or disappointment, but with pride. For so long, I'd carried this deep ache, believing that my life's work had gone unnoticed, that maybe Ethan was right, and teachers didn't leave legacies. They just survived. But tonight proved him wrong. I walked into the living room and picked up the envelope Mark had given me. My fingers traced the edges of the paper, still trembling slightly. Inside were two gifts: a check large enough to free me from the weight of financial worry, and a document outlining the Linda Hayes Foundation for Young Writers. Even now, the words felt surreal. My name, printed boldly at the top, followed by a mission statement about empowering kids from difficult backgrounds to tell their stories and chase their dreams. A scholarship that would go on long after I'd taught my last class. It was more than I'd ever dared to imagine. I sank onto the couch, holding the paper to my chest. "Tom," I whispered, thinking of my late husband, "I wish you could see this. I wish you could see that it was all worth it." I closed my eyes and could almost hear his voice, warm and steady as always. "You've been making a difference all along, Linda. You just couldn't see it yet." The next afternoon, I went out to my garden, the place where I always found peace. The autumn air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue. As I planted bulbs for the coming spring, I couldn't help but think about how teaching was a lot like gardening. You plant seeds you may never see bloom. You nurture, you hope, and you trust that something beautiful will grow long after you're gone. Later that week, Ethan and Claire came by again, both visibly different, softer somehow, more attentive. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been thinking about everything Mark said, about everything you've done. I was wrong. I'm so sorry for the way I've talked to you." Claire nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Me too. You didn't just give to your students, you gave to us, even when we didn't realize it. We were selfish, but we see it now." I hugged them both tightly. "I don't need apologies," I said. "I just needed you to understand." "We do," Ethan said, "and we want to help with the foundation however we can. It feels important, like part of our family now." My breath caught. For years, I'd been afraid my children would never truly know me. Now they wanted to carry my work forward. That night, after they left, I stood on my porch and watched the sun dip below the horizon. The sky blazed with streaks of gold and crimson, like a promise. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, free. I realized then that my legacy wasn't a house, a savings account, or the vacations I couldn't afford. My legacy was people. It was every student I'd encouraged, every life I'd touched, every seed I'd planted in the dark that had quietly bloomed without my knowing. Mark's words echoed in my mind. You believed in me before I believed in myself. As the stars appeared overhead, I whispered into the night, I wasn't just a teacher, I was a builder of futures. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt I had never been invisible.